Hi, welcome to Cornelia Unravels, a knitting podcast. This is episode 3. If you are a returning viewer and you are already subscribed to my channel, or you are not subscribed but you are returning anyway, thanks so much for coming back and watching my video again. And if you are new to my channel, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoy it, and if you do, I have episode 1 and 2 already uploaded, which you can watch as well. I need to be careful about where my hands are. I'm in a different spot today. I got home from work not long ago and there isn't much light left, so I kind of just had to find the best spot in the house to film this podcast because I really wanted to get it done and not have to wait until the weekend again, because I wanted to stick as close as I could do to the 2-weekly schedule. I think I'm going to be a little bit over this time, but that's okay. I am getting as close as I possibly can. So I hope that you are relaxed. I hope that you've got some knitting with you. I hope that you have a cup of tea or a coffee or a glass of wine or whatever takes your fancy. And I hope that you enjoy this episode. So, finished objects. I don't have any notes today, so I am flying by the seat of my pants, and I already realized that I don't remember the name of one of the patterns that I'm going to show you in this section, so there might be a lot of, it'll be down on the screen here with the name, and instead of me saying it, I have 3 of my own finished objects. One you've already seen, but I wanted to kind of show it one more time, and then 1 of my husband's finished objects, although maybe you could call it 4 of my husband's finished objects, or 5 even, but I wanted to show you those as well because he's been doing some knitting. So the first thing I wanted to show you was my Dorothy Hat by Flossie Knits. No, I think so. I will write that down. I might just be thinking of a very similar Instagram name that isn't Flossie Knits. Anyway, this is the Dorothy Hat. I have already shown this as a finished object, but I'm a bit of a believer that a hat isn't finished without a pom-pom. I love a good fluffy pom-pom. The bigger the pom-pom, the better, almost. So I just wanted to show what this looks like with the white pom-pom attached to it. It's a little bit floppy, but that's okay. So this is the Dorothy Hat. This is one that I'll put it on. It's not too bad. It still does feel a little bit small. So that's what it looks like on. And I do have a recipient for this hat because it's not as comfortable as I would like on my head. Mum and I have been talking about the fact that we think we both have a big head, and that hats don't seem to, well, it's harder to get a hat to fit us as well. So this is actually going to be given to one of Mum's friends. So when she goes back to New Zealand, she'll take that with her and she will pass this hat on. But I just wanted to show you an updated image, an updated video of this hat all done with its pom-pom. Now the second finished object is also a hat. I don't know why I'm tidying my hair because I'm going to put it back, put another hat on it in a second. So this hat here was a very quick knit. I think I knit it in 2 days. My husband Dean and I went on holiday. We went to a place called Port Fairy. It's a beach town down the Great Ocean Road in Victoria, and I overpacked my knitting, of course, way too many projects. And as we were driving down, he said, I didn't bring a hat. And then he said to me, can you knit me a hat? And I'm sure he was joking, but I had thrown this skein of yarn, which is the same as this one, in my bag, just thinking, maybe I'll want to cast on that hat. And since he asked me to make him a hat, I thought, sure, I'll make that hat now. So I knit it as quick as possible, and then he had a hat to wear for the last few days of our holiday, and it was quite cold in the morning. Our morning routine was going out for breakfast and then taking Watson down to the beach, and he would have a good run along the beach and play with the other dogs, and it was quite cold. So he had this hat to wear, but I did say to him, when we get back, it's my hat. So I have put a pom-pom on the hat now, and I'll show you what it looks like. Just poked myself in the eye. So this is the hat. This is a bit funny, I don't really know how to show it in the camera. So this is the hat. I have to duck really low for the pom-pom. It is the classic ribbed hat by Purl Soho. I might have said that, I can't remember. It was a really quick knit. It's knit in a worsted weight yarn, so it goes really quickly. It is 1x1 rib. It's a free pattern that you can just get on their website. So it's just 1x1 rib the entire time. I don't mind ribbing as much as I thought I did. I thought I wasn't a big fan of knitting ribbed things, and then I knit the entire hat and didn't hate it. So I think I decreased a little bit early because I thought that I was going to run out of yarn, and I definitely played yarn chicken. I didn't have a whole heap left from this skein. The other thing was, though, I didn't have a full skein because I had used some of this skein for the very top of this hat. So it was just shy of a full skein, and I just changed where I think I changed the decrease rate slightly. That's fine though, because I'm not a huge slouchy hat person. I think this is just right, just a little bit of looseness at the top. This one is too hot. It's too tight, too hot. I don't know, where did that come from? This one is too tight, so this is too beanie like, and I don't like too slouchy. So I'm apparently a Goldilocks hat person, and it needs to be just right. Not too slouchy, not too tight. So this hat is just right. And the pom-pom, again, I have forgotten the name of where I get my pom-poms from. I did talk about it in a previous episode. I spoke specifically about this pom-pom, but I will pop that down here because no notes. All right, this time I'll tidy my hair. Okay. So, finished object number 3 is this pair of socks here. This is the second one. So bring them up a little bit closer. So you can see the heel and the toe. So these socks are just vanilla socks knit in the Cookie Swap colorway by Woolens and Nosh, and with a contrasting heel, toe and cuff. I bought it as a sock set, so the contrasting mini came with their self-striping yarn. For the heels and the toes, I used the Simple Shortbread Socks pattern by Lindsay Fowler. She is Lost and Fawn. And these are for my husband. So I also finished these while we were on our holiday, and the second that I finished them, he put them on his feet. So I think that's a good, well, he tried them on and then left them on for the evening. So I think that is safe to say that he was happy with his socks. So I'm really happy with them. I definitely would use this heel and toe again. I think it's an afterthought heel, and I think it fits the middle ground between a heel, flap and gusset, and a short row heel. I find that short row heels, the ones that I have knit as an afterthought heel, I've done one pair for myself and I've done one pair for my mum, and both of us have agreed that the fit isn't as great on either of our feet. So actually, and I have done a pair, I've done 3, a pair for my husband as well, and it seems like it's a bit too short in this section here, and they slip underneath your heels. So this has a little bit of a longer, or seems like it does, a little bit of a longer gusset, for want of a better, heel flap, even though it's not a heel flap, for want of a better word, and seems to fit really nicely. So I do highly recommend trying out this heel and this toe if you have been knitting afterthought heels and haven't been happy with the fit on your heel so far. I definitely recommend giving this a go. Sorry, my words are very tongue-tied. I have been talking all day. I am a teacher, so now I've gotten to tired after work state, and obviously I'm a little bit tongue-tied. All right, so the last finished object, or finished objects, I was talking to Dean and we were talking about my podcast, and he said to me, oh, you could share my knitting on the podcast. So he has been knitting dishcloths. It came about from a practical standpoint because he wanted some new dishcloths for our kitchen and for cleaning his coffee machine and things like that. And I said to him, oh, I'll knit you the dishcloth. And then lo and behold, I didn't, because I had lots more other projects that I wanted to work on and things that I wanted to do, and dishcloths didn't end up high on my priority list. So he asked me, he said he already kind of knew how to knit. His grandma had taught him a long time ago, so he understood what to do. So it was basically reteaching him or reminding him how to knit so that he could knit the dishcloths that I wasn't knitting. So that turned into knitting some dishcloths for us, just for our house, and then he decided to knit a set for his parents and his brother and his brother's wife for Christmas last year, and then he's just kind of continued to plug away at knitting different dishcloths. So he has got these ones here that are all finished. So there's this one, which is just in one of the Knit Pick Smile yarns, in the Dishy yarn. This one. So these two are both kind of the more grandma's traditional dishcloths. And then this one here, which has a ribbed pattern in it. So this is going to be the name is down here pattern, because I cannot for the life of me remember what it is. And then he has this one he finished while we were on holiday, which is the same. Now these are going to be, he hasn't decided how they're going to be split up into the sets. I am going to go with these two together and these two together. Might be how it's going to work. But these are for my friends who might be watching, Lauren and Alyssa. So they each have 2 dishcloths each. Last time they came over, they couldn't pick up their dishcloths yet because the last one wasn't finished. So now, next time I see them, I can deliver them the dishcloths that Dean has knit for them. And then the last one he has done was this one here. So we talked about maybe learning a new pattern, doing something a bit different to the ones that he has been working on, because these 2 patterns are the same ones that he was doing earlier on, the ones that he knit for his mum, etc. So he did this one here, which is called the ball band dishcloth. So it's cool with a slip stitch pattern in it. So he finished that one just the other day, and he is working on another one at the moment. So those are my 2/3 finished objects, and to flesh out the finished object section, Dean's dishcloths. That's some good alliteration. Dean's dishcloths that he has finished as well. Alright, so we're going to get into works in progress. You will notice that the lighting has changed. We just turned the overhead light on in the bedroom and a lamp on. I thought that it was going to be, I turned this one on earlier and it was too yellow, but I don't know, this one doesn't seem too bad. So now we are in the light. Hopefully it's okay. We're definitely not in pro podcasting territory today, but that's okay. We are episode 3 and we are learning as we go. So the learning today is definitely record it earlier and try and turn the light on before you decide that the light's not going to work, instead of just deciding that it's not going to work. I also am quite conscious of the fact that we've got Sher curtains in our bedroom, which goes out onto, our bedroom looks out onto the road, and I've opened the curtains to give more light, and anyone who walks past is going to see me sitting on the bed with knitting all around me, with a stack of board games as my tripod, talking to myself in the camera, but that's okay. They can just wonder what I'm doing. So, works in progress. I had really hoped that this first work in progress was going to be a finished object, and it almost was, but I have made a mistake that I need to fix, and the steps that I'm doing at the moment takes quite some time. So the first finished object I'm going to share with you is my mum's pair of socks. So I shared the first one, this one here, last week. So that one's finished. And I'm so close to finishing the second one. It's going to be a little bit hard to show because I've got a lot of things attached to it. So I made a mistake with the toe. I made a mistake with the toe. When I finished it, I knew that it didn't look quite right and that it wasn't the same as the first pair of socks. And then I thought, maybe it was just, I wondered if it was my Kitchener stitch and that maybe I'd pulled my Kitchener stitch tighter with this pair than with this one because it looked a little bit more squared off. So I left it at that. And I also felt like this foot looked shorter than the foot of the first sock. But I thought, oh well, finished it off, left it. Mum tried it on. Definitely this one is smaller than the other one, but we all have one foot that's bigger than the other, so she found that if she put this one on one of her feet, it worked out fine, and she told me to leave it. But then I looked at it, and then I finally realized what I had done. So I have actually knit 2 completely different toes for these socks. Mum has another pair of socks that I've knit for her, and she told me that that toe was the toe that she really liked. And so what I think I did, that I didn't write down, was knit to the pattern for this sock until I got to the toe, and then I think I used a toe from a different pattern, which is a little bit more of a rounded toe and has the quicker decrease rate closer to the end of the toe, whereas this one was more, I guess, the wedge shape that has the even decreases. And when you look at them on camera, I feel like you can definitely tell the difference between the two. So now that I've realized that's what I've done, I can't leave it like that, so I'm going to have to redo this toe. So I'll just probably pick up the stitches underneath the toe. I might knit 1 or 2 rows more and then redo the toe. And then the other thing that I'm doing at the moment that's taking quite some time is the frill at the end is folded over and has a Kitchener stitch. So it's quite a long Kitchener stitch to do. I'm just picking up the second half of the stitches so that I can do the second half of the frill. So I'm nearly there. These will definitely be done. Sorry, the camera just wobbled. Watson is lying on the other side of the bed, other side of the boxes, and he's just made it wobble. Oh, there we go. And now he's got up. Sorry about that. if that made you feel seasick, I apologize. So these will definitely be finished by the next podcast. And I was really trying to get them done by today, but it just wasn't going to be a happening thing. So a whip for one more podcast, and definitely a finished object for the next one. My second work in progress, let's do this one. My second work in progress is on a small cable. I haven't changed it to a new one yet because I'm in the middle of the Raglan increases. So this is the colouring book Raglan by Aimee Sher. Now, I shared the swatch for this in my last episode. So I have this gold, it's called Golden Hour, by Stress Knits yarn as my main colour, and then I have a kind of tealy greeny blue as my contrasting colour for the stripes, but they don't come in until the body of the sweater after the sleeve separation. So I am just on the Raglan increases for this at the moment, but it's going really well. I'm really enjoying it, and it's moving along quite quickly actually. So I'm really happy with that. I'm really excited about it, and I think it's going to be really lovely when it's done. I think I'm happier with the colour as a garment than I was in the swatch. I was a little bit concerned about it. There was just something, I really liked it, but then at the same time there was something that seemed just not quite right. But now I'm really happy with the colour, now that it's kind of looking more garment-like instead of just being a little swatch. So I'm really excited to see what it looks like once it's time to put the stripes in on a larger scale as well, because I think that will make a big difference than just a fairly small swatch that I did. So that is the colouring book Raglan by Aimee Sher, and I mentioned this in my last podcast that this was going to be my entry. Watson has just stolen my ball of yarn that I was going to show you later. Let's see if I can camera and show you the mischief. Yeah, he knows. He knows. Just gonna leave that in there. I'll get that off him later, maybe not. So back to this work in progress. This is one of my entries into the Knit Diverse Knit Along, which is hosted by Aimee Sher, and it runs through to the end of May and is a way of celebrating Asian and Pacific Island knitters, designers and yarn dyers. So I've got this pattern that I've cast on, and then my next one actually is a project that can be a part of that knit along as well. So I will show you that, and I'm going to have two. I actually haven't, aside from my swatch, I really need to put a photo on Instagram, because the way that you participate in the knit along is not by sharing it on a podcast, but by putting it on Instagram with the hashtag KnitDiverseCal2022, I believe. But I actually haven't put my progress up on just my swatch, so I really need to take a photo. I'm using, I'll see if I can show you. Oops, sorry. Thank you for being patient while I fiddled around with that. Now I flipped it around. All right, hopefully you can see that okay. But this is a stitch marker from Twill and Print, and it is just the beginning of the round one that I had on hand. I've been using it on a pair of socks. Hopefully that wasn't blurry. I apologize if it was. Okay, and then my last work in progress that I have is a new cast on. I guess this kind of counts as a new cast on as well, but I'd shared the swatch, so you knew it was coming, whereas this one that I'm about to show you is definitely a new cast on that I've mentioned the yarn before, but I haven't mentioned the that I was going to cast on a project. It was a bit of a whim. So this is all I've got. It's just a very small work in progress because this is the start of a sleeve. So this, and you may recognize the pattern, it's been floating around on Instagram. This is the Great Gingham Raglan by Jessie Maed. Oi! Let me get the yarn off the dog. This time I need to pause it. What are you doing? There is the guilty dog who wants the treats for stealing the yarn. And he's lying on the other part, aren't you? Alright, I think we're back again. So, works in progress. I was up to this one here. Just the teeny tiny one, and I need to put it on a longer cable because I keep dropping stitches off it. So, this is the Great Gingham Raglan by Jessie Maed Designs. And it is being knit in Spincycle, and this is the Melancholia colorway. And hold it a bit closer. There we go. And then the other yarn that I'm using, this is yarn that I shared as an acquisition in my first podcast. Second podcast. I shared it in my last podcast. This is Knitting for Olive in the Dusty Rose colorway in both the soft merino base and the silk mohair base held together. I actually haven't swatched for this. I decided not to because I figured that it's just the beginning of the sleeve, and so if I'm super off, it's not the end of the world if I have to rip it out and make some decisions to do some things differently. And I'm using the Knitting for Olive 2 yarns held together because the pattern calls for a sport weight yarn, and the Knitting for Olive is kind of more of a light fingering weight yarn, so I figured that the two held together would get close-ish to a sport weight gauge. So I'll do a little bit more. I actually need to rip back. I've made a mistake. I've misaligned my colour work somewhere in the last row, so I do need to go back, and then I will knit a couple of inches and then work out what my gauge is and how I'm going and if I need to make any changes. So that's my second work in progress, and that's another one that can be a part of the Knit Diverse Knit Along, and as I mentioned, that runs until the end of May. So my last work in progress. Do I have another one? Maybe I don't have another one. Socks. No, I don't have another one. Sorry. No more works in progress. So we will move into the featured whips and the, what's my segment called? This is a disaster. That's okay. Mind blank. The featured whips and stash feature, that's the word. The featured whips and stash feature section of my podcast. Okay. Something just fell over. Oh my goodness. Why can't I think of the name of the segment? We are up to the stash feature and featured whips. Goodness me. I just said to Mum, this podcast is a shambles, and she said to me, I'm sure it's not, Cornelia. I'm just going to leave all of this in here, and we're seeing the real Cornelia here. That's okay. So, the featured whip I have in front of me. The featured whip I have in front of me is this one here. Right, which is in the middle of a row. And I'm also concerned, have I shared this before? I don't think I have done. I apologize if I have. So this WIP here is the My Chrysalis Shawl by, her first name is Lavinia, I believe, and I can't remember her last name, so another, I'll put it here, situation. So this is, yes, called the My Chrysalis Shawl. It's so squishy, it's so nice, and I am excited to have it as a shawl to wear. The only thing that stops me from picking this up again is because every time I have to pick it up, I really have to spend some time working out where I'm up to. I haven't done a particularly good job of marking my pattern, and I guess I put off having to sit down and work out where in the pattern I'm up to. It is knit in Ching fibre in their Melted Baby Suri in the, this is it in the skein. And it is in the Hummingbirds colorway. And then the other skein, I do not remember the name. Do I have the tag? I do not. But I know that this is by Kindred Red. So I really love both of these colorways. I love them together. The shawl is really squishy. So this is definitely something that if I become a little bit more monogamous with my knitting and I actually sit down, work out where I am, keep better track of it, it will go relatively quickly. It has 2-color brioche in it as well. So that's one side there, and that's the other side there. And obviously lots of eyelet details here. So I think once I start to clear some works in progress off my needles, and I seem to have a lot, that will be something that I'd really like to sit down and get done. It would be nice to get it done. We're heading into winter now. It would be nice to get it done and actually be able to wear it this winter and have it as something that's finished off. So it gave me a heart attack. Watson just ran into the bedroom and opened the door, and it gave me such a fright. All right, carrying on. So my husband's just closed the door for me, and I'm sure he's going to try and jump in again. The dog, not my husband. So this one here, the My Chrysalis Shawl, something that I really want to get stuck into again, as I say for all of these featured WIPs, and then I go and cast on new things instead. But I am excited about my projects. I do go through my projects relatively regularly, the ones that are works in progress, and make some decisions as to whether or not I want to keep knitting on them, or if I'm ready to frog them, or if they just need to stay and I guess time out for a little bit longer for whatever reason. And yes, I do try and do that relatively regularly. So all of my works in progress, whether they are current ones or whether they are ones that are kind of sitting on the shelf for a bit, I am really excited to have and to work on. But obviously, you know, new cast-ons are new and shiny, and I prioritize that this time instead of picking up something old and working on that instead. But this is one that I would like to work on. This is in a project bag. I will show you this one. So this here is covered in cat fur and has two cute enamel pins on it. And the enamel pins and the bag are all by the same person. Hopefully they focused. So this is a project bag by Twill and Print. I shared some of her stitch markers before, or one of her stitch markers on my colouring book Raglan. But this is one of her project bags that she makes. It's in a waxed canvasy fabric, and she screen prints the tops of hers as well, and has this drawstring closure. So it's a really sturdy project bag. The sweater that I was wearing last week, sweater, jumper, jersey, whatever we want to call it, that I was wearing in my second podcast was also printed by her and is one of her designs. And my stash feature, I've got 2 skeins of yarn here, and they were skeins of yarn that I picked up and put in my bag as other potential new cast-ons for my holiday. I didn't cast either of them on because this time I was a good girl and I decided to prioritize finishing this pair of socks instead of casting on new ones, because these are both sock yarns. So my first featured yarn is this one here by Full Moon Fibres. Now this is not showing up particularly well in regards to the colour of the 2 mini skeins. They are not looking anywhere near as bright as what they are in real life. They are super fun fluoro yellow, and probably if like you look at this bit here, that's probably closer to true to colour, and then a really bright pink. They're really nice colours. I don't know if it's the light, it's definitely dark outside now. Well, dusk outside now. And then this main skein, the colour's not picking up too badly for that main skein actually. So it's a 50 gram skein and 2 mini skeins. The main skein is called Opal. The pink skein is called Pink Experience, and the yellow skein is called Luminescent. I haven't decided on a pattern for these yet. I'm going to weigh this pair of socks when I've finished and see how much yarn I used. I think I'm going to have used too much to knit the long version. Maybe I could knit a short version of these socks, and I'd kind of like to do the ruffle in one colour and the stripes in another colour. I think that would kind of be cool. Retro kind of vibes. Retro roller skate socks, I feel. Not that I roller skate, but anyway, that's okay. So I would really like to cast this on soon. And then the other sock skein I took with me is this one here. This is by Tiny Human Knits. Don't know if you can see that, but this is it's as you can see, I think it's showing up quite well. It's on a sparkle base, and it is 75% superwash merino, 20% nylon, 5% gold stellina. And this is in the colorway the Dunderknit Rainbow. So I don't know if you've seen the Dunderknit podcast before. Her name is Caroline. She hasn't podcasted in a very long time, probably since pre-pandemic, or maybe had done a couple of the timeline of our lives, right? Pre-pandemic, during pandemic. I don't really know that we're post-pandemic yet, but I'm sure that'll be another timeline. So I'm recording on my phone and I just saw a message pop up that says, "Don't try to leave the room until you tell me, because there's a Watson barrier installed." So he can't come back in. So the Dunderknit Rainbow, it is a self-striping skein. I think it has 7 stripes in the repeat, and then the skein that Watson ruined for me just before, that I'm going to have to untangle, is one that I was thinking of using for the contrasting heels and toes. Now all of the colour is going to be out. It's probably a very similar colour to my lamp. And this is a leftover from my Slipstravaganza Stephen West Mystery Shawl from 2020. So this was in a Ching Fibre BFL base, but I can't remember the name of the colorway, but it is just one that I had left over in my scrap box, and I thought that they would look quite nice together. So that's all my featured whips and stash feature items. So we'll go into our other knits and pieces section, and I've got a few other knits and pieces, or other not so knits and pieces, to share with you. Alright, so other knits and pieces. In this segment today I have I guess some other crafty things that I have been up to. So less of the knits and more of the pieces. So I've got a few things that I wanted to share with you. The first thing, which shall I do first? I will do this one first. So a very long time ago, I purchased some fabric when I was down, I think it was down at Treehouse Textiles on the Mornington Peninsula here. I purchased some fabric that I thought was cute, and I thought, oh, maybe I'll make a project bag or a sewing bag or something like that with that fabric one day. So I decided that I would do. So I had a little bit of a play. I did and I didn't use a pattern. I didn't use a pattern to begin with, and then remembered that I couldn't quite remember how to do the boxed bottom on a bag, and that I hadn't installed a zip in a bag in a really long time either. So I ended up finding a free tutorial online, I think by Polka Dot Chair, on how to make a boxed bottom bag. And so some of it's my own design or things that I wanted to include, and then the how-to, I guess, I ended up using the free pattern for. So this is in this, I think it's super cute, deer fabric. It's just a boxed bottom project bag. I've put a rose gold zip on the top, and I need to attach this slightly differently, but it has a pom-pom. Mum actually made the pom-pom for me. I tasked her with that job. And this is made out of scraps from a shawl that I knit a couple of years ago, and it's all stress knits yarn in various colorways, and most of it's in her cashmere base, her sock or a fingering weight cashmere base, and then some of it is in her Surrey alpaca base as well. So it's a really nice fluffy squishy soft pom-pom, and I thought the colors went really nicely with the color of the fabric. And then on the inside, I was kind of thinking about what are the types of practical pockets that I would like in a bag. So I thought about having kind of a pocket where you can put your pencils or your pens, so a little bit narrower. Then I tried to make a kind of needle pocket. I was just seeing if I had a set down here, but I don't. Thinking about how if you roll up a fixed or a attached to a cable interchangeable needle, kind of the amount of space that it takes up. Excuse me. So if I had spare needles that I wanted to take for a project, let's say I had cast on something like this and I was knitting on the ribbing, but I needed the larger set for the body, then I had a specific spot in the bag where those would fit nicely. And then just another pocket where you could put a folded up pattern, or you could put a little notebook or something like that. So this is going to be really hard to show, and I did make a mistake with this and would like to do something a little bit different next time. But there are 3 pockets inside. So there's a narrower pocket on that side for the pens, this pocket on this side. It's not going to work. There we go. On this side, have to work out which angle to show it on. Was kind of my needle pocket, and then the pocket in the middle is just kind of the larger pocket, and I've made it in the same fabric as the deer. So I'd like to make some more of these. I need to refine my pattern a little bit. The interfacing I've used is quite stiff, and I've got 2 layers of it. My lining didn't fit as well as I would like, and yeah, there's just a few things that I would do differently next time, but it was fun to make. It was nice to get back to the sewing machine, as that's kind of what I did before I got really into knitting. And so that's my project bag. My next non-knitting, we'll stick with the non-knitting and then we'll finish with the knitting related piece. My next non-knitting related piece is my cross stitch that I've been working on. So a lot of people in a knit group that I've been a part of were really getting into cross stitch, and then I used to really enjoy cross stitch. It was something that I did when I was a kid, and I do have a cross stitch that I bought a few years ago. I realized that a few years ago actually was 9 years ago, or 7 years ago. Anyway, a long time ago, longer than I thought. I was like, I only bought that a few years ago, and then realized that the few years ago was actually really, really, really a few years ago. And I thought, oh, it might be nice to kind of pick something else up. I found Little Dove Designs on Instagram. I blame my friend Kristen for that. I'm not quite sure how I found her, but Kristen was the person who I knew who had already liked her and followed her on Instagram. So I am blaming you, Kristen, for my new cross-stitch obsession, and I couldn't pick which one I wanted, so I bought a whole heap of them. Now this one is her Mystery Gnome along, so it's a gnome themed cross-stitch. There's no gnome yet. He comes in about here. So I haven't got to him yet. I've just started with the flower. But it's on a really nice Ada green dyed fabric. And yeah, it's been really fun. It's been nice to do something a little bit different. It's tricky to juggle different crafts with knitting. You know, I feel quite obsessed with knitting. I really love knitting and I want to knit. It is nice to do some other crafts, but then I kind of feel bad that I'm not doing knitting. So I guess I just have to work out how I fit all the crafts in at the same time. Not at the same time, but you know, into the schedule, into the crafting schedule. And then I guess along the lines of fitting things into the crafting schedule, something else that I've done, I've dabbled in this a while ago and then stopped. I used what I had, so dyeing yarn. I had some bare yarn, I dyed the bare yarn that I had, I bought dye, and then used all of the bare yarn that I had, and just kind of left it at that, and then have thought about it again recently. Mum and I were talking about advent calendars, and she was going to get one with me this year, but then kind of couldn't decide which one she wanted. And so then she said to me, she's like, you can dye me an advent calendar. And I was like, sure. So I bought a whole heap of mini skeins, and I bought a whole heap more dye. I'm not very proficient at mixing dyes to create the color that I want, and I'm finding that the dyes that I do have are all quite saturated colors or darker colors, and I think my vibe at the moment is a little bit more pastel-y, neutral, rust colors, browns, those sorts of things. And so the colors that I have are not necessarily the ones that I'm gravitating towards. So I've ordered some more dye that just came in the other day. So I'm excited to have a bit of a play and see what other things I can come up with. But I thought I would share the mini skeins that I have dyed so far. So, tangled. So these three, now the darker it gets, the worse my lighting becomes, so that looks way brighter than it is in real life. So these are the three mini skeins that I have dyed. I'm not that proficient at re-skeining yarn or skeining yarn in the first place. So this one here ended up being a brighter orange than I thought. I thought it was going to be a bit more of a pinky orange, but it is definitely orange and has pink and orange speckles in it. It's probably a bit more color accurate actually. So that's quite fun. And then the next two I actually dyed together, and I'll unwind. I'll have to guess which one is the good one, the one that I'm happy with. So I think it's this one. In the dye pan, I had them next to each other, and this is going to be hard to explain. Anyway, the way that I had the two mini skeins laid out in the dye pan meant that I had blue at one end, yellow at the other end, and yellow and blue make green. I ended up with those two colours mixing together a whole lot more than what I wanted to, and so one of the skeins ended up quite muddy looking and much more green looking. I think it's this one. And so it's mostly just a yellow and greeny blue skein, which was not what I was going for, but the other skein I guess was kind of protected by the first mini skein and did turn out to be a little bit closer to what I wanted. So I'll show you that one. it. So the vibe was supposed to be a sunset vibe. We had a really pretty sunset the other night, and Dean said to me, hey, can you dye that? And I thought he meant like this. He actually meant like individual skeins in the sunset colour. Instead, I made things more difficult for myself and dyed it this way instead. So it starts with a bluey colour, I guess ends with a bluey colour. The horizon is the yellowy colour. Then it goes into a kind of more orangey colour. The aim in the middle was more of a pinky orange, but I think the other colours ended up washing that out a little bit. And then into a purpley colour, and then the blue at the end, which is kind of how the sunset looked that night. So I'm having a play around with dyeing yarn. That's what this mini skein looks like. I'm really proud of it, because when I've dyed yarn before, this isn't the style that I've tried. It's not necessarily my favourite style to knit with, but it was cool to be able to kind of fade the colours together and have at least one of the skeins work out of the couple that I had dyed. So in my other knits and pieces section, this is the only knitting related thing that I have to share, but my other pieces are my cross stitch and my project bag. So I will move into acquisitions next. So if you don't want to see my acquisitions, I do have a few. I actually might cut a few out given that it's getting darker, and I might just share a couple of them and save a few for the next podcast, because I would like you to be able to see them properly. So I'm going to move into acquisitions, and if that's not your thing, as I usually say in my podcast, thank you so much for watching, and I hope that you would like to watch again. But if you want to stick around, I'll show you a couple of things, have a quick life chat, and then I'll go have some dinner. Alright, so acquisitions. Like I just said, I will not share all of them. I'll just share a few. So this is all from one trip that I did. I went to a store called Maker Maker. I think I've mentioned them before, with Mum and Dean one day, and we were out doing some other things, but we were close to the yarn shop, and so of course I said we need to go to the yarn shop. So I got this skein here. It's a really nice blue called Pond from Ren and Ollie. So all of the ones I have bought Australian and New Zealand yarn dyers. This one here is already tagged to a sock project for Mum. She saw a sample up in the shop and really liked the socks, and she said that could be my next pair of socks, and it was knit in this colorway, so I'm going to knit those socks up for her next. I can't remember the name of them, but I'm sure you're going to see them as a work in progress at some point in time soonish, because I feel like I'm always going to have a pair of socks for Mum on my needles. And then the rest of the skeins are just for me. I really liked them, and have these. Oh, this is another Ren and Ollie one. I'll show this one next. So this is called Galagnite, and is a black and pink speckled yarn. It's not showing up too badly. So all of these will just be for socks. So this is in her sock yarn, so is this one, which is an 85-15 superwash merino nylon base. And then the next one is another speckled sock yarn. This one instead is by Prosper Yarn, who is a New Zealand based yarn dyer, and this is the colorway Pop Tart. So I'm really excited about this one, I think, in particular. And then I couldn't pass by this pretty pink skein. So this is called Atomic Bubblegum, and it's just a nice bright pink. It's not neon pink. I don't think it goes as far as being a neon pink, but it's definitely very bright. But I thought it would be quite fun if I wanted contrasting heels and toes. If there was a mini skein, I probably just would have got a mini skein or like a 50 gram skein, but there wasn't, so what a shame. Just have to have 100 grams. And this is, I thought these two went really nicely together, so I think this could be a fun contrasting color. And then I'm sure, I'm going to have plenty left to knit another pair of socks with this as well. So these are my 4 recent acquisitions. All right, I will go into life chat. I will try be quick and finish up my podcast. I don't know why I feel like I need to tell you what's coming next every single time. Maybe it's being a teacher. The kids always need to know what's coming next. And I always tell them what's coming next, even though it's on the board and I've already told them before. So maybe it's a habit of my job, telling people what's coming next, because you're just going to see what's coming next, and that's fine. So there's my little ramble. All right, so I just realized I missed an acquisition, so I'm going to share this with you, and I'm going to try not to crinkle, and we'll see if it shows. So I'm just reaching over to get it. So delicately pick it up. So yeah, these aren't showing as well as I would like them to. But I am currently getting each month the Garden Club from Stress Knits Yarn. I've mentioned before her yarn. My granny stripe blanket is mostly knit out of her yarn, and I've shown the previous month's mini skeins that I got from her in a previous episode. So I'm going to get them each month to aim to put them in my granny stripe blanket. So this month is her daffodil month, which was for March. I realize it's the start of May, but she posts them closer to the end of the month, and then they tend to take a really long time to get to me because she's based in the US. I'm not too bothered by that though. They're not something that I'm using right now. I'm just setting them aside to go in my blanket, so there's no hurry for them to get here. So it's basically just they come when they come. So I've ordered the next month already, the April ones, which is tulips. And yes, they'll come when they come. I'm not bothered about the fact that they're taking a while to get here. And it is what it is. Postage is never predictable and is always a little bit tricky. The really cool thing is that her garden club comes with the mini skeins, and then it comes with this postcard, or a postcard that matches the flowers, and then a vinyl sticker as well. Sorry if you can hear Watson barking outside. So that's just a really nice little package to get in the mail, and I'm excited to knit with those. So live chat is what I was actually going to start. What have I been up to? We went this weekend, just gone. We went for a drive down to the Mornington Peninsula, which is about an hour and a half from our house. And we took our bikes with us. I got my new bike on Friday afternoon. So we got to go for, Thursday afternoon actually. We got to go for a bike ride together. So we started on the western side of the Mornington Peninsula. That was me doing Never Eat Soggy Weet-Bix in my head. I taught north, south, east, west in class today, and I told the kids I do Never Eat Soggy Weet-Bix to try and remember which way it is, and I just did it in my head. So it's on the western side of the peninsula first. We first went to Treehouse Textiles, which is a fabric shop that I mentioned when talking about this bag. And I got some more fabric to make some more project bags. And then we went a little bit south of Mornington where the fabric shop is, and we went for a bike ride along the coast. It was really windy. The sea was quite rough. It wasn't necessarily, a nice blue sky day, but it was fun nonetheless. And then we went for a drive across the peninsula over to the other coast, the east coast of the peninsula, and we went to a yarn shop, which is where I have my acquisitions that I'll show next time. And then we went for another bike ride, so along the coast there and kind of through the mangroves and things like that. I saw a fox. I was really excited. I have seen foxes before, but usually they are running across the road and I am making sure that I slow down so I don't hit them, or they are unfortunately roadkill. So in regards to actually seeing a beautiful fox in the wild, in a nice safe place for it, that was really cool to see. I was the only person who saw it. Mum and Dean, I think I made too much noise. I was so excited, I think I squealed, and then it ran away. So I think Dean saw the face, and then by the time Mum caught up, it had gone completely. So we went for that bike ride. I've been back at work. The term started last week, so that's been busy. Before that, as I mentioned, we went away to Port Fairy. Maybe I'll try to put some photos in. So that was really nice. That was nice and relaxing. Like I said earlier, cafes, taking the dog to the beach, him going for runs and playing with the other dogs was fun. And then the rest of the day was just spent relaxing. We either played a board game or we read books, knit, watched TV. We've been watching Formula One. We spent some time catching up on the Formula One races that we have missed out on this year. So we started watching this year's ones from the Australian Grand Prix on Australian Grand Prix weekend. Unfortunately not live. That can be a goal for next year. But we went back and we watched the Saudi Arabia and the Bahrain races. So we've been keeping up with that. So that was something that we did while we were on holiday, just sat and watched that while doing some knitting. Dean knit his dishcloth and I knit all the things. I knit all the things. So those are the main things really. Otherwise it's just been pottering around at home. We have just started to have our front garden landscaped. I'm looking outside and now I can't see anything because it's pitch black now. We are having our front garden landscaped and our back garden, but they started the front garden today. So they pulled out all of the weeds and mess and everything, and now it's looking ready for something to happen. So that's really exciting to see some progress there. But I better stop talking. I feel like I've waffled. We'll see how long this is when I put it together and edit it. And I hope that you've enjoyed it. I feel like I said before, which I've said about 3 times in this segment, that this has been a little bit shambolic, but I'm happy that I got a podcast recorded. I'm happy to get it up, and I'll try and work out what the podcasting routine looks like with work and what my best day is, what weekend day to do it, when to set aside time, all of those sorts of things. I'll work it out, and hopefully next time we'll have a more light podcast where it's not getting darker and darker by the minute. But thank you so much for watching. I think that most of the bloopers are just going to stay in instead of being put on at the end. And yeah, I really appreciate you watching. I hope that you would like to watch again. And if you want to go back and watch episodes 1 and 2 of the podcast, but I really appreciate it. It's really exciting to be on this little venture, this podcasting venture, this, I guess, playing around with yarn dyeing venture, playing around with making project bags, just getting into all of the more knitty related things. That's a really fun, I guess, journey to be on and things to play around with. And I'm glad that you're coming along with me. So I hope you have a really good week, or 2 weeks will be the aim for my next podcast again. So I hope you have a really good couple of weeks, and I will chat to you next time. Bye.